Friday, the 12th of May. Hello, welcome to yet another exciting edition of Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. I am your host, Derek Mawinagbeta. This show airs every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays here on Studios 2 Television, on YouTube as well as on Facebook. Always a delight to hear from you. Give us feedback as to the content we bring to you each and every time we come on your screens. Coming up on today's edition, Accra High Court to sit on suit brought by Dr Kwabena Duffour against the Opposition NDC and other contenders in the presidential primary of the largest opposition party. Dr Duffour is praying the court to put on hold all processes for the elections until a credible voters register is made available 5 clear weeks ahead of the presidential primary. The Opposition NDC and its lawyers have described the suit as frivolous and are hoping the court can throw the matter away. Much later, we get into the content of expectations ahead of today's court sitting and bring you a response from the NDC. And much later, a latest report by Oxfam International has revealed that the average Ghanaian cocoa farmer has seen their living incomes decline by up to 16% since 2020. We get a response as well from the Ghana COCOBOD. That's your show for today. We get into the details if you stay with us right here on Studios 2 Television. You're welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. Like we mentioned before we went on the break, it's a big day for the Opposition NDC as they are headed to court and Accra High Court to defend themselves in a suit brought against them by one of their presidential aspirants, Dr Kwabena Duffour. Now, Dr Duffour, along with John Mahama and Kojo Bonsu, are vying tomorrow, if that is per the originally slated date, May 13, to contest for who becomes the flag bearer of the NDC. But all of that is in jeopardy because Dr Duffour has taken the matter and the NDC to court over the lack of what he says is a credible register. And on Wednesday, obviously, we heard from Alex Segbefia, who's a member of the Functional Executive Committee, where he, amongst many other things, raised concerns that yes, there was a challenge with the register, but it was being worked on to ensure that the election comes off and the process is smooth. But Dr Duffour is not satisfied, and he took the matter to court, and the NDC has been working round the clock. They've had the matter brought an abridged time because it was originally scheduled to be heard on the 15th. The time has been abridged now. It will be heard on the 12th, but they must work hard to ensure that the court can throw out that case or there will be an out-of-court settlement so that they can proceed with the primaries. And that's the matter to be determined in court today. And just quickly, by running you through the reliefs, Dr Duffour wants the election to be put on hold until a credible voters register is made available 5 clear weeks until an election can be held. And so if his reliefs are granted by the court, it means that the primary for the presidential will be postponed until at least 6 weeks if he's provided with a credible register. And the Opposition NDC, they're fighting off that particular suit. The chair of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, has been speaking. He's been granting a series of interviews over the last few hours, seeking to explain, obviously, all of the difficulties that have come about and how the party is going about to resolve the matter. He says that the suit is much ado about nothing. He's been speaking to big television station, TV3. We've been monitoring that interview, and here's exactly what he's been saying in the media space.
As far as I'm concerned, the noise is much ado about nothing. Because before we proceed to do any elections, we take provisions from our constitution to be the basic law. Now, within the NDC constitution, there is a provision that allows the national executive to formulate guidelines to take care of situations that have not been expressly provided for in our constitution. And so with this particular elections, we provided guidelines, and everything in the guidelines we have stuck to them, and I don't see where these complaints are coming from. One of the complaints seems to surround the delegates list. In fact, we choose our words very, very carefully. A delegate list remains a delegate list. A delegate list cannot be misconstrued to mean photo album. They are two different documents. We are bound by the guidelines to provide a delegate list within a certain time frame. That has been provided to all our candidates, including Dr. Duffour. I've been trying to get people around the table to do that. I haven't succeeded completely, but we are still working along that one. So we have party processes underway, and these court processes underway. But we would have liked that the party processes will be exhausted first before the court processes trigger in. Be that as it may, we are still trying to run the party processes side by side the court processes. So whichever yields results first, we will go by it.
So that's Johnson Osiedu Nketia explaining that this really is much ado about nothing. The NDC is going about the processes to ensure that everything can go on, all in relation to the primary slated for tomorrow, May 13. But in another interview with Radio Gold, Johnson Osiedu Nketia alluded to some new things that, as at yesterday, lawyers of the NDC failed to meet up with lawyers of Dr. Duffour because they had met the Chief Justice to have the case heard yesterday. But the lawyers of Dr. Duffour refused to make an appearance or did not turn up to afford the party the opportunity to have the case heard on the 13th, rather on the 11th rather of May. Here is that interaction with Radio Gold where he made that disclosure as well.
So I wrote the letters and sent them, particularly to meet Dr. Duffour, plus the officials from the party headquarters who have been named, so that we can look at the issues and sort them out. Then, some hours before the time of the meeting, I was called and told that Dr. Duffour's lawyers have advised that they should not meet me. So the meeting had to be postponed. If there are issues and the leader of the party, who has not been cited as part of the problem, is calling you for us to sit around the table to try and find solution, and it's like lawyers advise that don't meet your leader. So I strongly believe that maybe that information or instruction by lawyers has not been shared across board. That is how come that decision has been taken.
So the NDC, like you've been hearing, they are quite optimistic. They in fact issued a statement earlier in the week as well expressing optimism that they can proceed with the elections this weekend. But all of that really is still under serious contention. That's because the Electoral Commission, who on Wednesday, later in the day, released that press statement mentioning that they cannot proceed, say that no matter what happens in court today, it is too short a time for them to prepare to have the elections carried out tomorrow. Dr. Siribo Kweku, he's been speaking widely to quite a number of media houses in the capital, and he's been amongst many other things saying that it's too short a time. They can't prepare. And so, per the Electoral Commission's opinion and their perspective, no matter what happens in court, May 13th cannot happen for the NDC in terms of primaries. Dr. Sribo Kweku is the Director of Elections at the Electoral Commission. He's been speaking. Let's take a listen to what he's been telling some journalists in the capital.
I don't know whether there are two elections with but different registers. Are we using the same register? What is in contention is the register. Right? And the letter was written to us that we should do both of them. They did not say that we should do one separate from the other. And the issue in contention is the register. So I would think that they should take the time and address the issues surrounding the register so that we get a election going.
Well, given the structure of the Electoral Commission, knowing that you operate from districts all across the country and the constituencies are within good proximity, would you really say that time is the real enemy here if the matter is decided upon tomorrow?
So the ballot papers are in Accra here. So we cannot move to the court gives us to go ahead. We'll start the distribution. And taking the ballot papers from Accra to Bolga and the rest, you need some time.
And that's the reason. Well, the NDC is serving notice that the elections will not be postponed, at least from what Mustafa Gbandi says. If they come asking, if you like, nicely or forcefully, will the Electoral Commission budge?
I didn't get that question.
If the NDC comes asking, either nicely or forcefully, after the court ruling, because then Mustafa Gbandi seems to suggest that because of the frosty relationship the NDC has had with the Electoral Commission over the period, the Electoral Commission is perhaps using this to settle those costs. That was what he said a while ago. Is that the case?
I don't know whether he was at the meeting, but I know the chairperson himself said that he understands the stand of the commission. Because he knows that once we have been asked to conduct an election, once there's a call for injunction, we stay away. So Mr. Shirin Katia said he understands that. So there should not be commenting on issues that they are not privy of. If you saw how we interacted with them in the rest, they are our friends. We are not enemies. And we don't have any scores to settle. There's a court issue. Let's see to that the issue is addressed properly. The court gives us we'll go ahead and do it. We are not interested in fighting anybody over any issue.
Doc, had it not been because of the court issue, would you say that the Electoral Commission was ready and prepared to deliver excellently on Saturday?
We have met them 7 times. With some of them, Mr. Sidikati himself attending, some too led by the Director for Elections, Mr. Amati. We have done their constituency executive elections. We have done their regional executive elections. We have done the national executive elections. So if we have an issue, why would you do the 3 of them and leave this one? We don't have any issues with them. Let them settle the court case and we'll be there to do it for them.
Dr. Sribo Kweku is the Director of Elections at the Electoral Commission. And so still really not clear. There's a lot of confusion as to exactly what will happen by close of day tomorrow. We'll be monitoring here at Studios 2 Television and here and Let's Talk Ghana, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations, what really happens and bring you details as and when it does come through. We're going for a break. When we return, there's a latest report released on the 11th of May by Oxfam International. They have done extensive report on the living conditions of cocoa farmers in Ghana. I'll tell you, or I'll let you in on the report right after this. Stay with us. You're welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana. Let's delve straight into it now. And Oxfam International, they are a global NGO who focus on poverty, farming, and eradication of poverty while meeting some of the sustainable development goals set out by the United Nations. They've come together, put up a report specific on Ghana, not on the West African sub-region or any other thing, just on Ghana and on cocoa farming in the country. What have they found out? Well, they found out that the living income of cocoa farmers in Ghana is declining. Since 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, that income or income which cocoa farmers continue to receive is fast declining. What are some of the key highlights from the report? Let's just, on your screen now, you begin to see some of the key highlights. And so, one of the key highlights is that the net income of Ghanaian cocoa farmers has fallen on average by 16% since 2020 on the average. But for women particularly engaged in cocoa farming, it's fallen by nearly 22%. And so if you're taking, say, about 2,000 cedis, that's just rough estimate, rough calculations. You're a cocoa farmer, you take around 1,000 cedis, 16% is almost 200 cedis of your salary. And almost 200 cedis has fallen off the amounts that you take. Not forgetting inflation coming into play and the other things. But for women in particular, it's more than 200 cedis. And so since 2020, more than 200, and these are just examples, more than 200 cedis for women cocoa farmers, they're losing more than 200 cedis in terms of the money they make. That's how bad it is for individuals who are responsible for the commodity that brings Ghana the highest foreign exchange. And it's been so since the country's, since independence. Another key highlight, which is also coming on your screen now, is that up to 90% of the Ghanaian cocoa farmer does not make a living. They don't make a living income. It's just this hala, yeah, hala, boha, and then they get something. As to living income, that fixed income, they are getting income. COCOBOD says they are introducing living income differentials and the like. 90% of these farmers do not get it. So where does this go to? It's a question that COCOBOD will seek to answer because we've been getting responses from them as well. And then another key highlight is that many of the 800,000 cocoa farmers in the country survive on just $2 a day. How much is $2? If you check the interbank market, it's over around 10 cedis to 11 cedis. So just 22 cedis with their families, they survive on just 22 cedis a day. Just 22 cedis. For people who are responsible for the highest foreign exchange in the country, the commodity that brings that, just 22 cedis a day. And that is the worrying detail as captured. Meanwhile, the multinational chocolate production companies, in excess of billions, that's what they are making. In fact, if you read the report, some of the families or organizations who are benefiting from the chocolate industry have raked in more than 2 billion cedis. $2 billion rather, I beg your pardon. $2 billion in the last 3 years alone. And we're yet to hit middle of 2023. So just 2 years and a half, more than $2 billion. That's the situation for the average Ghanaian cocoa farmer. That's the Oxfam Living Income Report on the average Ghanaian farmer. We subjected these to some analysis and sought to get responses from COCOBOD. Fifi Boafo is the head of public relations at COCOBOD. He's been providing some responses to us on these matters. Here is what he told us at Studios 2 Television.
What is COCOBOD's reaction to the report by Oxfam?
Well, I think we've consistently made a point that if you consider how much money there is within the industry, in terms of how much the trade houses as well as the chocolate manufacturers are making compared to what producing countries make, it does not give us that commensurate income compared to the efforts put in. And consistently we've been pushing for that. So it is not a new thing to us. It only gives us that energy to continue pursuing that there's still a need for a better remuneration of cocoa producers.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get these multinational companies to correct this very wrong?
Well, it's a business enterprise. There have been structures that have existed over the years. That is the more reason why we introduced the living income differential as a means of ensuring that farmers get better remuneration compared to what the system has given them over the years. The living income differential initially brought a bit of a relief at the early stages. However, midway we saw some means of also making sure that that income that were coming to the farmers is chipped off. This come in at a time where we are still pursuing that very agenda of having better remuneration for the farmers. Interestingly, in the last few weeks, we've seen the price picking up. Our expectation is that it will continue and it will help in getting better remuneration for our farmers.
So would you put any timelines to that?
Timelines to
maybe giving more.
Well, our engagement with the chocolate manufacturers has gone on for some number of years. It's seen some intensification in recent years, and our expectation is that with the intensification of the engagement, there will be some results that will be achieved. Just as I said, we've seen price at the terminal market improving, and that is an indication that there's something better in sight. And our expectation is that it will not just be a one-off period thing, but then it will be sustainable within a period where farmers can have a better income for what they produce.
Will there be a point where we'll go like, okay, until something meaningful is done, we'll not really, export these beans to these companies?
Well, you see, the conversation about not exporting cocoa is not a new thing to us. Okay. Indeed, that is the reason why Kwame Nkrumah started building silos. Yeah. It did not solve the problem. The truth is that we produce cocoa in Ghana, but we don't consume. So if you produce the cocoa and you take the decision that I am not selling it, the question is, what happens to the produce? The farmers who produce the cocoa expect that when they sell the cocoa, they will be paid. Are we prepared to say that we are keeping the stocks? For how long? What will be the use? How will the farmers also get their money? And can we have a means of paying for it and keeping them in warehouses and the cost involved? So yes, it is not something that we've not thought about. It has happened. It did not solve the problem. So we think that there are different means where we need to find in solving the problem of low remuneration of the farmer.
So if I got you right, if you want to go hard on that, we will lose and not them.
I am not categorically stating that we will lose, but if the records available show that it has not solved the problem because we've tried it, it did not work. There are the cost implications. Because if you are keeping cocoa in a warehouse, the warehousing cost is one. You need to fumigate it. You have to apply chemicals to have the quality of the cocoa for that period of time. Because the truth is that we will not consume it eventually. It will still have to sell. Sure. So that possibility is one so far. We are yet to do the cost-benefit analysis to say that it is the way to go.
So cocoa farmers are still losing their farmlands to illegal mining. And I know a report by reporter in the Ashanti region.
That's Fifi Boafo there providing details, responses to this latest report, and we'll continue to ask the probing questions for you here on Studios 2 Television. But just before we go, another unfortunate incident where 9 children have died at Fana near New Botiano as they were crossing the canoe they were using from their island village to a school, capsized, and 9 of them died. It's another of a series of incidents of such a nature, and really action needs to be taken by the Transport Ministry and the Maritime Authority. Unfortunate incident, but that's how we end today's edition of Let's Talk Ghana. We return on Monday with details as to exactly what transpired in court for the NDC and whether or not the primaries does come off. I am Eric Mawina Egbeta. Do make a date with us on Monday, the 15th of May, 2023.
Studios 2 TV. The truth is here, in your eyes.